Hi, my name is Ken Aston. I wrote a microbiome prescription website, and this is another one of the continuing series of roughly weekly review of one or another person's microbiome. This person basically, as the next one, had a fair amount of fun, as in they went through lots of MDs with very little progress or even find anything abnormal. When I went in to look at his sample, I actually thought it was frustratingly normal because there was relatively little which seemed to be totally out of whack. But the thing is, I remember somebody else who had done the same thing too. And what happened was, after the first suggestion, suddenly what's wrong showed up as a result of it, and now we have a unfrustrating microbiome dysfunction, as in the changes are visible. So I'm thinking this is a very similar case. Here is a pictorial to explain what I'm picking up. Here is where a person is unhealthy. Here is the degree of abnormality there. And where the person happens to be right now is way over here, with a lot of values being pretty close to normal. So the question is how to get from here to here across this mapped surface. So the suggestions will probably move him somewhere closer towards healthy. Could be on top of this peak, on top of that peak, way over there. Don't know the exact parts. We don't have enough expertise. But it is why you can hit a situation where somebody has severe functions, severe issues, severe syndrome symptoms, but even the microbiome comes normal. Even every test comes back normal. In other words, what's wrong with you? Must be psychological. No. If you understand the microbiome model, what we can have here is we can have close to normality, but still being abnormal. So that's basically explaining this sample and my prior blog in terms of visual as to what's going on. The microbiome is multidimensional. You have 400, 700, 800 different microbiomes being produced. This is just three-dimensional. So add in another 600 dimensions, and you start seeing the complexity of the issue. Okay, let's go and take a quick backstory. 12 years sick, MCS, gut, insomnia, believes he has seen 1,000 doctors in Spain, which is possible. Not totally likely. That means seeing a new doctor every day for 3 years. 13 years means seeing a new doctor once a week. You could get up to 1,000 doctors. So there's a bit there. So cites bad methylation, and usually methylation is a separate issue because that's generally DNA based, and I will add a footnote to the post dealing with methylation issues, just giving some readings for the person. Again, my focus is microbiome, and with data and data science, it is not dealing with a person's general medical conditions. So one interesting aspect is Giardia, because Giardia, we know, can be a trigger for chronic fatigue syndrome. There was this major Giardia outbreak in Oslo, which I've written about on my CFS remission blog. So the fact that he had Giardia and ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome, related or whatever, is not a total surprise. Okay, so this post will take you to see about Giardia. 1 healthy, 7 unhealthy. Basically doesn't look bad at all. Jason's Hollerix criteria, 99 percentile, which basically means no significant issues. Potential shows only hypersomnia. The opposite of what he is experienced is insomnia. At least we have a something connecting with sleep disturbance there. Basically went through and looked at things, and 2 things end up basically showing up. One is Mutaflor, my old favorite, and Something which I have rarely ever seen show up as a suggestion, or at least not near the top suggestion, is Lactobacillus bulgaricus, which is the typical yogurt probiotic, which is, as I said, it's interesting. It suggests this person is in his own little world of microbiome oddities. One word of warning, these two should not be taken at the same time because they are going to fight with each other. So you could be spending money and half of whatever you're buying is going to be killed off by the other, and who knows where you're going to go. Consensus report, I went through, and you can see the numbers there and the number of things counts there, and going through all of his consensus items, the things that were I sort of picked as probably things should be considered. There's a lot on the list, of course, hundreds of items usually, is green tea and oolong tea, cranberry, cacao, lard, interesting thing. Usually lard is not viewed as healthy, but in this case it may actually be because it will encourage or inhibit certain types of bacteria. And then we have herbs, and the herbs are there, and selenium is there, which is not atypical for a chronic fatigue syndrome microbiome suggestion, and same with grapeseed. So those two are there. The other things will show up on occasion, but then again, this person is not in the middle of the pack. He's off in his own corner. And then we have the avoids garlic. He lives in Spain. He may have trouble getting rid of garlic from his menus, but if you can, then do so. Uric acid, usually so there's a product called monolaurin, coconut oil, etc. would probably be avoid. Highly saturated fat, I don't think it was there. Slippery elm. And then we have a ton of probiotics to avoid, which is not unusual. And then the suggestions. So we, over in the land of supplements, we see B1, B7, we have zinc, vitamin D, and selenium. Selenium came from the alternative way, and we suggest avoiding things. A, E, B complex, 2 specific B vitamins are go. The other B vitamins, for example, riboflavin, is a no, no lithium, and he's probably not dealing with needing a lithium prescription, so that's sort of a done. Supplemental from the, we have a bunch of things there, and there we have some of the acid, and those are the ones which are basically abnormal. Now, here we hit a little bit of fun, and I'll, in the rest of the video, hopefully we'll be able to walk through it a bit better. Okay, we are on the site, and actually I have a new revision of the site, a refactoring the UI, which is going to be out shortly. So I'm going to use the new factoring rather than the old one. The same stuff is on both menus, it's just locations have been moved around, and a new one I think you may find easier to use. So we can go in there and we see my profile. You can go in and click here, look at the generic health ones, and we see things. As you see, the hypersomnia is the only thing that sticks out. Everything else is basically nothing there. We have the bacteria, which are potentially problematic, and we have Jason's one, and again we're back in 99 percentile range. So that's it. So we can go back to my profile. We can look at the biome tree and corner chart, and basically all that is previewing. Let's take a look at the corner chart. So with the corner chart, you can go and you can drill down into things and see what's going on at various levels. And there. Note one thing to notice is the bacteriology is 76%, and none of this area has drill down. And why doesn't it have drill down? It means we know the general type of bacteria it is in, but we do not know anything specific as to strains. It's one aspect of the microbiome. There's so much in nature that we frequently don't know what's going on. So this issue in here, whatever is in that one, could be the cause, but we don't know what it is per se. So we end up having to work slightly different way. So that's the chart. Let's head back. And over there. Download a sample not. He has entered his symptoms. Oh, he hasn't entered his symptoms in this case. So let's not worry about that at the moment. Then we have things such as antibiotics for MDs and drug lists for MDs there too. Now in the email he asked about one thing, so I'm going to go and open that up. And here's the real interesting thing. Based on his symptoms, his MD has prescribed rifamycin right here. And guess what? Number one choice on the evaluation of antibiotics, antiviral for his microbiome is that exact same antibiotic. That one out of 1,200 different antibiotics, the one they evaluated as the best, it happens to be the same one which his MD prescribed to him based on his symptoms. So that is a sweet win in terms of the forecasting from the microbiome alone and the MD from symptoms alone coming to consensus, which is always a nice situation. So let's continue onwards, and so that's basically it. Now we can go over here and do a changing the microbiome. And again, all these items are on various menus on the original site. It's just aggregated here, which I think you'll find a lot easier to do it. This is a person who does have chronic fatigue syndrome, so we have a canned set of suggestions for him from using his microbiome. It's canned especially because, keyword here, brain fog. These four often ends up having brain fog associated with it, which means this side of the house may be too complicated for them to handle easily, so at least let's give them something to start with. So we click that, and now we see the suggestion. There's only 2 bacteria that were picked, both are colostrum, and that's basically it. And then we have the suggestions down at the bottom there. That's not many suggestions, and that's because we are filtering by the PubMed definition what is in chronic fatigue syndrome. This is a canned filtering, trying to get a pretty good one. If you try and you end up with a small number of bacteria, okay, you probably want to make use of the other ways. Again, this is a quick and dirty with good choices, but in some cases the choices may not be a good match or produce a large number. You want at least 7, preferably 15 to 20 bacteria listed there for a good set of suggestions. Okay, so we now go over to JSON, for example, and we'll just click suggestions. We get a suggestion, and we don't even need to look at the suggestions because basically it is automatically accumulated in here. Consensus state is sitting there. And we can now, I'm going to do standard lab. Most of the top 5 give very similar results. And there, and we see we have 40 there, which is much better. We know up to 4. And box plot whisker is what we're going to do next. We have 68 different bacteria picked. Count of monograph 72. And we'll do top and bottom. Let's do for 15th percentile. Oh, we have 187. Okay, so we got a whole lot more going for the 15th percentile. We could go back and say, okay, let's just do the 7th percentile there. Sorry. Let's go back again. I forgot to check this box. Now let's do the 7th percentile. We have about 40% less. Okay, so we have now done all of these, and now we have consensus, and we can look at the number of suggestions per. You can see there, and similar number is on the blog post, so it's not a particularly great one. And now we view the bucket suggestions consensus. So here we have the items, and we have the ability to do fast search. For example, if we say, okay, I only want to look at herbs, then we have the herbs here, and the thing is, the safest takes here is there. So what we can do is, what item has the best benefit? St. John worts, black cumin, devil there, and you can go down, and the take benefit and avoid benefits there. The take count is how many of the suggestion lists this particular item. We could go and see after one item comes in more often suggested, which is cinnamon, but here's the catch. It has significant amount of negative risk to it, and we really want to keep these numbers as low as possible relative to those numbers. So 0.45 and 15 is fine. Almost 4 and 8, not so fine. You are having a greater risk. Remember, what we are doing is we are trying to do it. Just remember, some people having trouble reading the screen, depending on what type of screen you're on and resolution. So I've just flipped it over to a larger thing. So it goes through. We have the safer take, where there's some avoid and some take, but the take value is greater than the avoid value. Likely safe takes. High risk avoidance, and we have a grand total of 181 items. And all these are negative here. Double click. Slippery elm sitting right at the top. This is a type of yeast, which could be problematic. Saccharin. Chlorine deficiency means having a diet which is deficient in chlorine. So basically, it's inadvertently saying you should be doing chlorine. Carob. Notice that cacao is a plus. Carob, which is a common substitute for cacao, is a negative. They have different impacts on the microbiome, etc. So we've got a whole bunch of items here, and so we can go and take a look here. We could try things like saying, okay, fish. Is fish on this list? Nope, it's not. Remember, he was indicating fish. Nope. I think fish is on one of the lists. Fish oil is there. It's a safer take, which is good. And let's type in here and see if we define. Okay, so we probably don't have a fish oil, which is probably the closest to. So that basically takes us to looking at suggestions. We do have the KEGG AI suggested probiotics, which does it, the calculation is a totally different way. And in this case, at 1% we have nothing, so I'm going to bump it up to 10%. And there we have things, and Activa, which is probiotic lactose, so you can see things there. And highest rate is basically Activa. Probably Bacillus lactis is the item that does it, but actually this one, if you click through, you can see there it is. We have two things in there, and the combination of them evidently is good benefits. Okay, so that covers the basic things. We have at the bottom a very much more sophisticated thing, which I'm not going to go into here for the simple reason brain fog doesn't work if you're trying to do that. And you need a fair amount of background knowledge as to what bacteria does, what certain bacteria do or don't do, and that is a whole different thing. Okay, I think that is it for the quick walkthrough of how I did the blog post, and I'll be adding a few notes to the bottom of it shortly.